The Michigan winter hit harder than usual that year. Detroit's industrial district wore its decay like a badge of shame. Abandoned factories with shattered windows, rusted chain-link fences sagging under the weight of neglect, and streets cracked from decades of freeze-thaw cycles. The sky hung low and grey, threatening snow that would only make the crumbling infrastructure look even more desolate. Marcus Chen stood in the parking lot of Chen Precision Engineering, watching his employees file out for what might be the last time. 23 years he'd built this company from nothing. 23 years of 16-hour days, missed birthdays, sacrificed relationships, all to create something that mattered. And now, at 47 years old, he was watching it all slip through his fingers like sand. The problem wasn't the market. It wasn't the competition. It was engine model 7X, the revolutionary marine diesel engine that was supposed to save them all. 6 major clients, including Great Lakes Maritime and Superior Shipping, had placed orders totaling $42 million. The contracts were signed, the deposits were paid. The engines were built, and every single one of them was failing. Marcus's phone buzzed again, another call from Richard Holloway at Great Lakes Maritime. He let it go to voicemail. What could he possibly say? 3 of their cargo ships were dead in the water, costing them hundreds of thousands per day in delays. The lawsuits were already being drafted. Mr. Chen, his assistant Patricia, emerged from the building, clutching her coat against the bitter wind. At 62, she'd been with him since the beginning, back when they operated out of a garage on the east side. The engineering team is asking if they should come in tomorrow. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar pressure of a stress headache building. Tell them yes. We need to figure out what went wrong with those engines. Marcus, they've been here for 70 hours straight. Mike Henderson actually fell asleep at his desk this morning. I don't care if he fell asleep standing up. Those engines are destroying everything we've built. Every day we don't fix them, we lose more money, more reputation, more everything. Patricia's expression softened with concern. You need rest, too. When was the last time you slept more than 3 hours? I'll sleep when this is fixed. Marcus turned away, dismissing her. He watched her walk to her car, shoulders hunched, not just against the cold, but against the weight of impending unemployment. 78 people worked for Chen Precision Engineering. 78 families depending on him to figure this out. The wind picked up, carrying with it the metallic scent of snow. Marcus looked across the street to where the old Johnson Metal Works building stood empty, its windows like hollow eyes staring back at him. That's what Chen Precision would become if he couldn't solve this. Another corpse in Detroit's graveyard of failed dreams. His phone rang again. This time it was David Wu, his lead engineer and oldest friend from MIT. Tell me something good, David. I can't. David's voice was hoarse with exhaustion. We've torn apart the 7th engine, same problem as all the others. The fuel injection timing is off by microseconds, but it's enough to cause incomplete combustion. The deposits build up, the pistons seize, and the whole thing becomes a very expensive paperweight. Marcus felt his jaw clench. We tested these engines for 6 months. How did we miss this? The problem only manifests under sustained load in cold water conditions. Our test facility simulated everything except the exact combination of, I don't need excuses, David. I need solutions. Can we retrofit them? There was a long pause. Not with our current understanding. The issue is in the fundamental timing mechanism. We'd essentially have to rebuild them from scratch. How long? 6 months. Maybe 8. We don't have 8 months. We don't have 8 weeks. Marcus kicked at a chunk of ice in the parking lot, sending it skittering across the asphalt. Great Lakes is threatening to pull all future contracts. If they go public with this failure, every other client will follow. We'll be done. I know, Marcus, I'm sorry. Marcus ended the call and stood in the empty parking lot as the first snowflakes began to fall. Each one was tiny and perfect, following physical laws that were predictable and unchangeable. If only his engines were so simple. He forced himself to go back inside. The building felt cavernous and cold, the heating system struggling as always. His office was on the second floor, overlooking the main production floor. Normally, that floor would be humming with activity. CNC machines cutting precision parts, workers assembling components, the organized chaos of manufacturing. Now it was silent and dark. Just emergency lighting casting long shadows across equipment that sat idle. Marcus collapsed into his chair and pulled up the engine schematics on his computer for the 1000th time. Somewhere in these millions of lines of CAD drawings and calculations, there was an answer. There had to be. His eye caught the framed photo on his desk, the day they'd won the Governor's Excellence in Manufacturing Award 3 years ago. He looked so confident then, so sure that Chen Precision was unstoppable. His father would have been proud. Marcus's parents had immigrated from Taiwan in the 70s with nothing but engineering degrees and determination. His father had worked as a machinist for 40 years, retiring with arthritis so bad he could barely hold a fork. But he'd pushed Marcus to dream bigger, to build something that would last. "Sorry, Dad," Marcus whispered to the empty room. "I'm failing." A noise from downstairs made him look up. Someone was in the building. Marcus frowned and checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. Everyone should have left hours ago. He descended the stairs quietly, wondering if he had an intruder. Detroit wasn't what it used to be, and copper thieves had hit several abandoned buildings in the area. But as he reached the production floor, he could see light coming from the engine testing bay in the back. Marcus approached cautiously, then stopped in the doorway, stunned by what he saw. A woman, probably in her late 20s, was bent over engine 7X prototype number 3, the one his team had been dissecting all week. She wore grease-stained jeans and a faded flannel shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Tools were spread around her on the concrete floor, and she was working on the fuel injection system with the kind of focused intensity Marcus recognized in himself. "What the hell are you doing in my facility?" Marcus's voice came out harsher than he intended, amplified by exhaustion and stress. The woman jerked up, banging her head on the engine mount. She swore under her breath and turned to face him, one hand rubbing her scalp. In the harsh fluorescent light, Marcus could see she was younger than he'd thought, maybe mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes and motor oil smeared across one cheek. "I'm sorry, she started. "I don't care what you just... This is private property. This is proprietary technology. How did you even get in here?" Marcus pulled out his phone, ready to call the police. "The side door was open. I saw your team working earlier and I thought maybe you thought you'd break in and steal industrial secrets. Do you have any idea the penalties for corporate espionage?" "I wasn't stealing anything." The woman stood up, and Marcus saw she was tall, nearly his height. Her grey eyes flashed with indignation. "I was trying to help." "Help?" Marcus laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the cavernous space. "You're what, 25 years old? You crawl in here off the street and think you can solve a problem that my team of experienced engineers can't figure out?" "I'm 27, and I know exactly what's wrong with your engine." The sheer audacity of the statement left Marcus momentarily speechless. "You know what's wrong?" "Yes. The fuel injection timing algorithm is using a linear compensation model for temperature variations, but diesel fuel viscosity changes non-linearly at cold temperatures. When the engine operates in water below 45 degrees Fahrenheit under sustained load, the injection timing drifts just enough to cause incomplete combustion." Marcus stared at her. What she'd just described was exactly the problem David had outlined, but it had taken his team 3 weeks to narrow it down to that specific issue. "Who are you?" "My name's Elena Rodriguez. I'm a mechanical engineer, or I was before." She stopped abruptly, something painful crossing her face. Look, I know your engines are failing. I've been following the story, and I know I can fix them. More following the story. Marcus felt his anger reignite. His company's failure was apparently public knowledge now. Perfect. Let me guess, you read about it on some industry blog and decided to play detective? I read the leaked engineering specs on an industry forum and saw the problem immediately. The solution is actually pretty straightforward if I what? Listen to some random person who broke into my facility? Marcus stepped closer, his voice rising. Do you understand what's at stake here? This isn't some academic exercise. Real people's lives depend on these engines working, real jobs, real families. I understand that better than you think. I doubt that. You show up here in your thrift store clothes covered in grease, thinking you can waltz in and save the day. This is the real world, not some Hollywood movie. We have processes, certifications, liability issues. Even if by some miracle you actually knew what you were talking about, I can't just let some random stranger work on $42 million worth of equipment. Eleanor's expression hardened. Right. Because I don't look like I belong here. Because I'm not part of your club. This has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with it. You took one look at me and decided I was trash. Just another broke nobody from the wrong side of Detroit trying to pull some scam. Marcus felt a flash of guilt, but his exhaustion and fear overrode it. You broke into my facility. The door was open. Doesn't matter, you're trespassing. You're looking at proprietary technology without authorization, and you're wasting my time. Marcus pulled out his phone again. I'm calling the police. You can explain your good intentions to them. Something changed in Elena's face then. The defiance faded, replaced by a kind of resigned exhaustion that Marcus recognized because he saw it in the mirror every morning. Fine, she said quietly. She began gathering her tools, moving with practiced efficiency. Marcus noticed the tools were old but well-maintained, professional grade despite their age. For what it's worth, Mr. Chen, the fix is in the ECU programming. You need to implement a polynomial compensation function that accounts for the non-linear viscosity changes. The algorithm is actually simpler than your current one, which is probably why nobody thought of it. Sometimes the obvious answer is the one we overlook. She walked past him toward the door, and despite himself, Marcus asked, "Where did you say you worked?" Eleanor paused, her back to him. "I didn't, but I was lead engineer at Blackwell Marine Technologies." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Blackwell Marine was one of the premier marine engineering firms in the country. Was? I blew the whistle on safety violations. Turns out companies don't like that. I've been blacklisted for 18 months. Can't get a job anywhere in the industry. But hey, at least I've got my principles, right? Her laugh was hollow. That and $4 will get me a coffee. She continued toward the door, and Marcus stood there, torn between his anger at the intrusion and a growing suspicion that he'd just made a terrible mistake. "Wait," he called out. Eleanor stopped but didn't turn around. Marcus's mind was racing. If she'd really been lead engineer at Blackwell, she wasn't some amateur. And what she'd said about the fuel injection timing. It made sense, more sense than anything his team had proposed. But his pride, his exhaustion, his fear, they all screamed at him not to trust this stranger who'd broken into his facility, who represented everything he was afraid of losing: youth, fresh perspectives, solutions he couldn't see. "Go," he said finally, "before I change my mind about calling the cops." Elena's shoulders sagged slightly. She walked out into the snowy night without another word. Marcus stood alone in the testing bay, surrounded by the broken pieces of his dreams, and wondered if he'd just let his only hope walk out the door. Outside, the snow fell harder, blanketing Detroit in white, covering the rust and decay, making everything look clean and new, at least for a little while. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He tried, lying in bed in his downtown loft, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed the encounter with Elena Rodriguez over and over. The certainty in her voice, the technical accuracy of her assessment, the pain in her eyes when she mentioned being blacklisted, and his response calling her trash, essentially. Maybe not in those exact words, but the implication was clear enough. By 4 a.m., he gave up on sleep and drove back to the facility through empty streets slick with new snow. Detroit looked almost peaceful at this hour, the usual urban decay softened by darkness and fresh powder. The city had been fighting for decades to reinvent itself, to rise from the ashes of automotive industry collapse. In some ways, Marcus felt like he and Detroit were in the same boat, struggling to survive, trying to prove they still mattered. He let himself into the building and went straight to the testing bay. Engine 7X Prototype 3 sat where Elena had been working on it. Marcus looked at the tools scattered around it and frowned. She'd left them behind in her rush to leave. He picked up a torque wrench, a snap-on professional model that had seen better days but was still perfectly calibrated. Not the kind of tool someone bought on a whim. Marcus sat down on the cold concrete floor next to the engine and opened his laptop. He pulled up the engineering forums Elena had mentioned, searching through technical discussions until he found the thread about his engines. Sure enough, someone had leaked the basic specs. Nothing classified, but enough for people to speculate about the problems. And there, buried in hundreds of comments, was a post from someone with the username Ghost Engineer. The issue isn't in the hardware. It's in the fuel timing algorithm. They're using linear compensation for temp viscosity changes. That works fine in warm water but fails in Great Lakes conditions. Need polynomial function, probably third order, to match the actual viscosity curve of number 2 diesel at low temps. Can model it if anyone cares. The post was from 6 days ago. Nobody had responded to it. Marcus's team had been so focused on hardware that they'd barely looked at the software. He spent the next 2 hours reading everything Ghost Engineer had posted on the forum. The technical knowledge was deep and precise. This wasn't someone speculating. This was an expert who understood marine diesel systems at a fundamental level. Marcus pulled up the ECU code for the fuel injection system and began implementing the changes Elena had described. He worked quickly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, implementing a polynomial compensation function to replace the linear model. The math was elegant in its simplicity. She was right that the solution was actually less complex than what they'd been using. By 7:00 a.m., he had a modified version ready to test. He loaded it onto the engine's control unit and ran a cold start simulation. The engine fired up smooth and clean, the fuel injection timing adjusting perfectly as the simulated temperature varied. Impossible, Marcus muttered, running the simulation again. Same result. The problem that had plagued them for months, potentially solved with a few hours of coding. He heard footsteps on the production floor and looked up to see David Wu walking in, coffee in hand, looking like death warmed over. "You're here early," David said, then saw the laptop connected to the engine. "Please tell me you didn't work all night." "Test this." Marcus gestured to the engine. "Cold start protocol, sustained load simulation, full thermal range." David set down his coffee and ran the test sequence. His eyes widened as the data came up clean. "How did you—" "It's not the hardware. It never was. It's the ECU programming. The fuel timing algorithm doesn't account for non-linear viscosity changes in cold conditions." We checked the programming multiple times. We checked it for errors. We didn't check if the underlying model was wrong. Marcus stood up, his back protesting after hours on the concrete floor. "Run a full diagnostic. If this holds up, we can reprogram every engine in the field in a few days." "Marcus, this is—" David ran the test again, then a third time. "This is brilliant. How did you figure it out?" Marcus thought about Elena Rodriguez, about the certainty in her voice, about how he'd treated her. I had help. Over the next week, Marcus's team validated the fix. The polynomial compensation function worked perfectly, solving the timing drift problem completely. They reprogrammed the engines at Great Lakes Maritime first, and within 48 hours, all 3 cargo ships were back in operation. Superior Shipping followed. One by one, the crisis unwound. Richard Holloway from Great Lakes Maritime called personally. "Marcus, I don't know how you pulled this off, but you saved our asses. Those ships being down was costing us $500,000 a day. We're good now. Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry for the problems. Hell, every new technology has growing pains. The fact that you fixed it this fast shows the quality of your operation. We're moving forward with the next order, 10 more engines." Marcus hung up and stared at his phone. 10 more engines. The company was saved. His employees could stop worrying about unemployment. Everything was going to be okay. Except it wasn't okay. Not really. He thought about Elena, somewhere out there, blacklisted and broke, knowing she could solve this problem but unable to get anyone to listen, and he'd treated her like a criminal, like she was beneath him, not worth his time. Marcus called Patricia into his office. "I need you to find someone for me. Elena Rodriguez, former lead engineer at Blackwell Marine Technologies." Patricia raised an eyebrow but made notes. "What do you need her for?" "I need to apologize." It took Patricia 3 days to track Elena down. Blackwell Marine wouldn't give out information on former employees, but Patricia had been in Detroit long enough to know how to work the network. She finally got an address from a former Blackwell employee who remembered Eleanor, a tiny apartment in Highland Park, one of Detroit's rougher neighborhoods. Marcus drove there on a gray Saturday afternoon. Highland Park was part of Detroit's struggle made visible. Abandoned buildings standing next to occupied ones, vacant lots filled with trash, liquor stores with bulletproof glass. But there were also signs of resilience. Community gardens, freshly painted murals, people working to reclaim their neighborhood block by block. Elena's building was a 3-story brick structure that had seen better days. The front entrance lock was broken, so Marcus let himself in and climbed the stairs to apartment 2C. He could hear voices through thin walls, a baby crying somewhere, a couple arguing in Spanish, a television blaring a game show. He knocked on Elena's door, no answer. He knocked again, louder. "Hold on!" A woman's voice. Irritated, the door opened, and Elena stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different without the grease and exhaustion, younger, prettier. Then she recognized him, and her expression hardened. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. "I need to talk to you. I'm pretty sure we covered everything last time. I'm trash. You're successful. Trespassing is bad. Did I miss anything? Can I come in? No? Elena, please, 5 minutes." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed and stepped aside. 5 minutes. The apartment was tiny. A studio with a kitchenette, a futon, and not much else. But it was clean and organized. Engineering textbooks lined a makeshift shelf made from cinder blocks and boards. A battered laptop sat on a folding table. Through the single window, Marcus could see the Detroit skyline in the distance, gray against a grayer sky. "Nice place," Marcus said, then immediately regretted it. He hadn't meant it sarcastically, but it came out that way. "It's what I can afford on unemployment and odd jobs." Elena crossed her arms. "Clock's ticking, Mr. Chen. What do you want?" Marcus took a breath. "I fixed the engines. Your solution worked." "Of course it did. Great Lakes Maritime placed another order. Superior Shipping is moving forward. The company is saved. Congratulations. I'm thrilled for you." Her tone made it clear she was anything but. "Elena, I need to apologize. The way I treated you that night, calling you trash, assuming you were trying to steal from me, it was wrong. You were right, and I was too proud and too scared to see it." Elena's expression softened slightly. "Apology accepted. You can go now. I'm not finished. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. I'm offering you a job. Lead engineer position, full benefits. Salary of $120,000 to start. Elena stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You're offering me a job? Yes, the job I should have had 18 months ago before I got blacklisted for doing the right thing. Yes. And you think this makes everything okay? You swoop in, throw money at me, and suddenly we're good? I think you deserve to work in your field. I think you're brilliant. And I think my company would be lucky to have you. Your company that you run from your position of power, that you built while people like me. She stopped, shaking her head. Do you know what the last 18 months have been like? I worked at Blackwell for 5 years. I loved that job. I was good at it. Then I found out they were cutting corners on safety inspections, falsifying test data, putting people at risk. So I reported it. I went through proper channels, did everything by the book. Marcus stayed silent, letting her talk. They fired me within a week. Restructuring, they called it. But everyone in the industry knew why. And suddenly, I couldn't get hired anywhere, not because I wasn't qualified, but because I was a troublemaker. Someone who didn't know how to be a team player. Elena's voice grew harder. I've applied to 63 jobs in 18 months. 63. I've gotten 3 interviews, 0 offers. Do you know what that does to a person? I can't imagine. No, you can't, because you're Marcus Chen, who built his company from nothing through hard work and determination. That's the story you tell yourself, right? Self-made man, achieved success through merit alone. I did work hard. I don't doubt it. But you also had advantages you don't even see. Your father was a machinist. You grew up around manufacturing. You went to MIT. You had connections, access, credibility that someone like me has to fight for every single day. Someone like you? A woman, Hispanic, from a family that couldn't afford to send me to MIT. I went to Wayne State on scholarships and loans I'm still paying off. I worked 2 jobs through college. I earned every bit of my knowledge the hard way. And when I tried to do the right thing, the industry crushed me for it. Marcus felt something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. Not anger, but recognition. He thought about his own journey, the doors that had opened for him, the people who'd taken chances on him. Had it really been just merit? Or had he been swimming with advantages he'd never acknowledged? You're right, he said quietly. I didn't see it. I looked at you and made assumptions. I saw someone who didn't fit my picture of what an engineer should look like, and I dismissed you. That was wrong. Elena's anger seemed to deflate slightly. She sat down on the futon, suddenly looking exhausted. Why are you really here, Mr. Chen? Call me Marcus, and I'm here because I need someone who sees solutions I can't see. Someone who's not afraid to challenge the way we've always done things. Someone who does the right thing, even when it costs them. He sat down in the folding chair near the window. I'm also here because I'm ashamed of myself. That night in my facility, you were trying to help, and I treated you like garbage. I can't undo that, but I can try to make it right. By offering me a job. By giving you a chance to do what you love again. But also selfishly, yes, because I think you'll make my company better. Elena was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Marcus noticed they were rougher than they should be, probably from whatever odd jobs she'd been doing to survive. He thought about his own hands, soft from years behind a desk, and felt another pang of guilt. If I take this job, Elena said finally, I need things to be clear. I'm not going to be quiet if I see problems. I'm not going to just go along to get along. That's what got me blacklisted in the first place, and I'm not going to compromise who I am. I wouldn't want you to. And I'm not going to be grateful. I'm good at what I do. This isn't charity. This is you recognizing talent that you almost missed. Agreed. And I want 140,000. If you're paying a man with my qualifications 120, you're underpaying him too. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Deal. Elena finally looked up at him, and something in her expression had changed, still guarded, but with a hint of hope breaking through. "When do I start?" "Monday if you want." "I want." She took the envelope and opened it, scanning the formal offer letter Patricia had prepared. "This is real. It's real. I thought I'd never work as an engineer again." "You almost didn't. I almost let pride and fear keep me from seeing what was right in front of me." Marcus stood up. "I'm glad I got a second chance to get it right." Elena stood too and extended her hand. Marcus shook it, and in that moment, he felt like something important had shifted, not just for his company, but for himself. As he drove back to his loft, Marcus thought about what Elena had said about advantages and assumptions. How much of his success had come from merit, and how much from circumstances he'd never questioned. How many other talented people had he overlooked because they didn't fit the mold? The snow had stopped, and a weak winter sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long shadows across the city. Detroit looked almost beautiful in that light, old and scarred, but still fighting, still refusing to give up. Just like Elena Rodriguez, just like his company, just like himself, hopefully becoming someone better than he'd been. Elena's first day at Chen Precision Engineering was a Monday in late February. Marcus had announced her hiring to the team the previous Friday, describing her simply as a marine engine specialist with extensive experience who'll be joining us as lead engineer. He'd left out the part about how they'd met, figuring that story could stay between them. The morning was brutally cold, with wind chills pushing below zero. Marcus arrived at 6:30 a.m. to find Elena already in the parking lot, sitting in an ancient Honda Civic that looked like it was held together by rust and prayer. She was wearing the same flannel shirt from that first night, layered over a thermal underlayer, and she was shivering. Marcus tapped on her window. She rolled it down, and a wave of cold air hit him. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "About an hour." "Didn't want to be late on my first day. Why didn't you come inside? The building's always open by 6. "Didn't want to presume." Elena's teeth were chattering. "Elena, you work here now. Come on, let's get you warmed up before you get hypothermia." Inside, Marcus made coffee while Elena thawed out in his office. He noticed she'd brought a worn backpack that probably contained her entire professional life, notebooks, tools, a tablet that had seen better days. "We'll get you set up with a proper office, computer, whatever you need," Marcus said, handing her a mug. "I should have thought of this before. Patricia will help you with all the onboarding paperwork, ID badge, all that fun stuff." "Thank you." Elena wrapped her hands around the mug, absorbing its warmth. "I know I said I wouldn't be grateful, but thank you. You earned this position. You don't need to thank me." The rest of the engineering team began arriving around 7:30. Marcus introduced Elena to everyone, starting with David Wu, whose reaction was interesting. His eyes widened in recognition when he heard her name. "Blackwell Marine, right? You did the work on the BM-450 series?" Elena nodded, clearly surprised he knew. "You've seen my papers?" "Seen them. They're required reading for anyone working on high-efficiency marine engines. Your approach to combustion chamber optimization was revolutionary." David shook her hand enthusiastically. "I can't believe we got you. Blackwell must have been idiots to let you go." Something passed across Elena's face, pain mixed with vindication. They had their reasons. Over the next few days, Marcus watched Elena integrate into the team. She was quiet at first, observing more than participating, taking notes in meetings, but rarely speaking up. He could see her measuring everything, trying to figure out where she fit, if she really belonged. The breakthrough came on Thursday. The team was gathered in the conference room, discussing a new project, a potential contract with the U.S. Coast Guard for patrol boat engines. David was presenting the preliminary design specs, and everyone was nodding along, impressed with the work, except Elena. She was frowning at the diagrams projected on the screen. "Is there a problem?" David asked, noticing her expression. Elena hesitated, glancing at Marcus. He gave her an encouraging nod. "The cooling system," she said. "The placement of the heat exchangers doesn't account for rough sea conditions. In heavy weather, you're going to get air pockets that could lead to overheating." The room went quiet. David pulled up the cooling system schematics and studied them more carefully. "I don't see how—" "Here." Elena stood up and walked to the screen, pointing to specific components. "In calm water, the flow dynamics are fine, but when the boat is pitching and rolling, water in these channels will slosh, creating temporary air gaps. The sensors won't catch it fast enough, and by the time they do, you could have localized overheating. It's a problem we ran into at Blackwell on a similar design." David stared at the screen, then pulled up a simulation program. He modified the model to include rough sea conditions. The team watched as the simulation ran, and sure enough, the temperature readouts spiked in exactly the areas Elena had indicated. "Son of a bitch," David muttered. "You're right, we would have missed that completely until field testing." "Easy fix, though," Elena said, already sketching on a whiteboard. "If you relocate the heat exchangers here and here and add a secondary flow channel, you maintain circulation regardless of orientation." The team spent the next 2 hours reworking the cooling system design with Elena's input. By the time they finished, they had something better than what they'd started with, more efficient, more reliable, more elegant. After the meeting, David pulled Marcus aside. "Where did you find her?" "She found us, actually." Marcus watched through the conference room window as Elena gathered her notes, other team members clustering around her with questions. "Long story." "Well, however it happened, don't let her go. She's special." But integrating Elena into the team wasn't without challenges. Some were predictable. She was the only woman in an engineering department of 16 men, and she was younger than most of them. Marcus noticed the small slights, people talking over her in meetings, her suggestions being dismissed until a male colleague repeated them. The assumption that she'd handle administrative tasks like ordering lunch or scheduling meetings. Marcus tried to address it when he saw it, but Elena usually beat him to it. "I'm here to design engines, not coordinate catering," she said pointedly when Tom Richardson asked her to order sandwiches for a client meeting. "Patricia handles that. Her extension is 201. Tom looked taken aback. You thought because I'm a woman, I should handle the domestic tasks. I get it, but I'm a lead engineer just like you, so maybe treat me like one." The room went silent. Marcus stepped in. "Tom, Elena's right. If we need food ordered, that's an administrative task, not an engineering one." After that incident, things improved. The team began to see Elena not as an outsider, but as someone who made them all better. Her insights were too valuable to ignore, and her willingness to challenge assumptions pushed everyone to think more critically. March brought an unexpected opportunity. James Morrison from the U.S. Navy called with a problem. They were developing a new class of patrol boats, and the engine contractor had hit a wall. The engines were underperforming, and they couldn't figure out why. Could Chen Precision take a look? "It's a consulting job," Marcus explained in the staff meeting. 3 weeks on site at the Norfolk Naval Base. Good money, great exposure, potential for future contracts. I need someone to lead the diagnostic team." He looked at Elena. "You interested?" She blinked, surprised. "You want me to lead it? You're the lead engineer. This is what lead engineers do." "Marcus, I've been here 3 weeks. People barely know my name. They know your work. That's what matters. And honestly, I think you'll see things the rest of us might miss, just like with the Coast Guard engines." Elena glanced around the table at the other engineers. Some looked supportive. Others, like Tom Richardson, looked less enthusiastic. "I'll need a team," Elena said carefully. Take whoever you need. David can help you coordinate. Over the next week, Elena assembled her team. David Wu for his experience with Navy contracts, Jessica Park from the Mechanical Design Group for her expertise in vibration analysis, and Sam Okafor, one of the younger engineers who had a gift for creative problem-solving. She notably did not choose Tom Richardson, which didn't go unnoticed. The day before they left for Norfolk, Tom cornered Marcus in the parking lot. "You're really sending her to lead this? She's been here less than a month." "She's qualified. She's a diversity hire who got lucky with one good solution." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Careful, Tom. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You hired her to check a box, and now you're putting her in charge of a major Navy contract because you're afraid of looking sexist if you don't. First of all, that's not why I hired her. I hired her because she's the best marine engine engineer I've met in a decade. Second, I'm putting her in charge because she's earned it. And third, if this is what everyone's thinking, then everyone needs to think harder about their own biases." Tom shook his head. "This is going to blow up in your face. Then it's my face to blow up. But I don't think it will." The team left for Norfolk on a Monday morning, flying out of Detroit Metro. Marcus drove Elena to the airport, wanting to make sure she knew she had his full support. "You've got this," he said as she grabbed her bag from his trunk. "I hope so. A lot of people are betting I don't. Let them bet. You'll prove them wrong." "What if I don't? What if I can't figure out the problem?" Marcus studied her face, the determination mixed with vulnerability. "Then you come back, and we try something else." "But Elena, you've spent 18 months thinking you weren't good enough, that you didn't belong. That's not true. You're here because you earned it. So go show the Navy what you can do." Elena nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Okay, let's do this." The team was gone for 3 weeks. Marcus got regular updates from David. They were making progress. Elena was handling the pressure well. The Navy officers were impressed. But it wasn't until they returned that Marcus got the full story. They arrived back on a Friday afternoon, all of them exhausted but energized. Marcus gathered everyone in the conference room, and Elena presented their findings. The problem, it turned out, was deceptively simple. The Navy's contractor had used a new composite material for the engine mounts, trying to reduce weight and vibration. But the material had a resonant frequency that, under specific load conditions, amplified vibrations rather than dampening them. It was causing microfractures in the engine block that led to oil leaks and reduced performance. The solution is to go back to traditional rubber mounts with a different damping configuration, Elena explained, showing her calculations. It adds about 15 pounds per engine, but it completely eliminates the vibration problem. We tested it on 2 boats, and the performance improvement was immediate. "The Navy's thrilled," David added. "They want us to retrofit the entire class, 42 boats. And they're talking about Chen Precision being the prime contractor for the next generation of patrol craft engines." Marcus felt something swell in his chest. Pride, vindication, relief. "That's incredible work, all of you." After the meeting, as people were leaving, Tom Richardson approached Elena. Marcus watched from across the room, ready to intervene if necessary. "I owe you an apology," Tom said quietly. "I didn't think you could handle this. I was wrong." Elena regarded him for a moment. "You didn't think I could handle it because I'm a woman?" "Yeah, that was part of it. At least you're honest." Elena picked up her presentation materials. "I get it, Tom. I've dealt with it my whole career. But here's the thing, I don't need you to believe in me. I just need you to not actively work against me. Can you do that?" "I can." Tom extended his hand. "Welcome to the team. For real this time." Elena shook his hand, and Marcus saw something shift in the room's energy. She'd proven herself beyond doubt, not just to Tom, but to everyone who'd had reservations. That evening, Marcus took the core team, Eleanor, David, Jessica, and Sam out to dinner at a nice restaurant in Greektown. It was a celebration, but also a thank you. They'd saved the company once with the fuel injection fix, and now they'd opened doors to potentially massive government contracts. Over appetizers, Jessica raised a glass. To Elena, for showing us how it's done. To the team, Elena corrected. I couldn't have done it without all of you. But you led it, David said, and you did it brilliantly. Elena smiled, and Marcus saw something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Genuine happiness. She belonged here. She knew it, and everyone else knew it. Later, after the others had left, Marcus and Elena stood in the parking lot near their cars. The March night was cold, but clearer than it had been. Stars visible above the city lights. Thank you for trusting me with Norfolk, Elena said. Thank you for justifying that trust. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me this is all a mistake, that I don't really belong here. You belong here more than you know. Marcus leaned against his car. Can I ask you something? That night I found you in my facility. Why did you come? Why risk it? Elena was quiet for a moment, her breath visible in the cold air. Because I missed it. Engineering, problem-solving, building things that matter. I'd spent 18 months feeling like I was invisible, like I had nothing to contribute. And then I saw the story about your engines, and I knew I could help. I knew if I could just show you the solution, maybe you'd see me as something other than whatever it was the industry decided I was. I almost didn't see you. I almost let my fear and pride blind me. But you didn't. Not in the end. Elena smiled. You know what the hardest part of these last 18 months was? Not the unemployment, not the financial stress. It was wondering if I'd been wrong, if blowing the whistle at Blackwell was a mistake, if I should have just kept my head down and played along. I started to think maybe I was the problem. You weren't the problem. You did the right thing. I know that now. Being here, working with people who value doing things right, not just doing things fast or cheap. It reminds me why I became an engineer in the first place. She looked up at the stars, to build things that work, to solve problems that matter, to make things better. That's why I started this company too, Marcus said. Somewhere along the way, I got so focused on survival that I forgot the why. You reminded me. They stood there in comfortable silence for a while, two engineers who'd found their way back to what mattered. See you Monday, Elena finally asked. See you Monday. Marcus watched her drive away in her old Honda, and he thought about how close he'd come to losing all of this, not just the company, but the opportunity to work with someone like Elena, to become someone better than he'd been. The Navy contract was just the beginning. With Elena on the team, he had a feeling Chen Precision Engineering was about to reach heights he'd never imagined, and this time he'd do it the right way. 6 months after Elena joined Chen Precision Engineering, the company was unrecognizable from what it had been during those dark February days. The Navy contract had come through, 42 patrol boats, with options for more. Great Lakes Maritime had increased their orders. Superior Shipping had signed a 5-year agreement. The company had gone from barely surviving to actively hiring, bringing on 12 new employees across engineering, manufacturing, and quality control. And with Elena's influence, those hires looked different than they would have before. Marcus stood in the conference room on a Tuesday morning in August, looking at the assembled engineering team. There was Marcus Chen, first-generation Taiwanese-American, David Wu, Chinese-American, Elena Rodriguez, Mexican-American, Jessica Park, Korean-American, Sam Okafor, Nigerian-American. And now, after the recent hiring push, Priya Patel from Mumbai, Hassan Ibrahim from Somalia by way of Minnesota, and Sarah Blackfeather, who was Ojibwe and had grown up on a reservation in northern Michigan. The team had gone from 16 engineers to 23, and they represented a broader range of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives than Marcus had ever imagined when he'd started the company. "All right, people," Marcus said, calling the meeting to order. "We've got a big opportunity in front of us. The Department of Energy is soliciting proposals for a new generation of hybrid marine engines for research vessels. Cleaner, more efficient, longer range. It's a 3-year, $80 million project." The room buzzed with excitement. This was exactly the kind of transformative project that could establish Chen Precision as an industry leader. "Eleanor's going to lead the proposal team," Marcus continued. "We've got 6 weeks to put together something amazing. This is all hands on deck." After the meeting, as people dispersed to their various projects, Patricia caught Marcus in the hallway. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. She's in the lobby." Marcus frowned, checking his calendar. "I don't have any appointments." "I know, but she says it's important." In the lobby, Marcus found a woman in her early 30s, professionally dressed in a navy pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She stood when she saw him, extending her hand. "Mr. Chen, I'm Rebecca Martinez, investigative reporter with the Detroit Free Press. I'm working on a story about workplace discrimination in Michigan's manufacturing sector, and your name came up." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "In what context?" "I've been interviewing former employees of various companies. One of them mentioned that you recently hired Elena Rodriguez, despite her being blacklisted by Blackwell Marine Technologies." "That's not—" Marcus stopped himself. "Can we talk in my office?" Once they were seated privately, Rebecca pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Chen, I want to be clear. This isn't a hit piece. I'm actually interested in the positive angle here. Elena Rodriguez was blacklisted for doing the right thing, blowing the whistle on safety violations at Blackwell. She couldn't find work for over a year. Then you hired her, and by all accounts, she's been instrumental in your company's recent success. I'd like to understand why you did that when so many others wouldn't." Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. "Initially, I almost didn't. When I first met Elena, I made every wrong assumption you could make. I looked at her and saw someone who didn't belong, someone who couldn't possibly be qualified. It's embarrassing to admit, but it's true." "What changed your mind?" "She was right and I was wrong. About the engineering problem, yes, but also about her, about what it means to be qualified. About the assumptions I was making without even realizing it." Rebecca made notes. "Can you elaborate on that?" Marcus thought about how to articulate something he was still figuring out himself. "I built this company believing it was a pure meritocracy. Work hard, be good at what you do, and you'll succeed. That's the story I told myself about my own success. But Elena made me realize how much of what I thought was merit was actually advantage. Doors that were open for me that weren't open for everyone." "What kind of doors?" "Connections, credibility, benefit of the doubt. When I walked into a meeting, people assumed I knew what I was talking about because I looked the part. Asian guy with an MIT degree, fits the stereotype of the engineer. Elena had to prove herself at every turn, and even when she did, people questioned whether it was real or just luck." "Is that why you've made diversity a priority in your recent hiring?" "It's not about diversity for diversity's sake. It's about recognizing that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. There are brilliant engineers out there who've been overlooked because they don't fit someone's picture of what an engineer should look like. That's not just wrong morally, it's bad business. We're leaving potential on the table." Rebecca smiled slightly. "That's a pretty progressive stance for someone in your position." "It's not progressive, it's practical." Marcus stood up and walked to his window, looking down at the production floor where engines were being assembled. "Elena saved this company. If I'd let my prejudices blind me, we'd probably be bankrupt right now. Instead, we're thriving. That's not political correctness. That's recognizing reality. Some people would say you're just trying to avoid liability, that this is performative. Some people can think whatever they want. I know why I'm doing this. And honestly, even if someone wants to call it performative, I don't care. If the result is that talented people who've been locked out get opportunities, that's what matters. Rebecca made more notes, then looked up. Would you and Elena be willing to do an on-the-record interview together? I think your story could really resonate with people. You'd have to ask Elena. It's her story more than mine. Marcus found Elena later that afternoon in the testing bay, working on efficiency calculations for the DOE proposal. He explained about the reporter's visit and her request. Elena's reaction was guarded. I don't know if I want to be the poster child for workplace discrimination. Yeah, fair enough. It's your choice. But Eleanor set down her tablet. Maybe it would help. How many other people are out there like I was, blacklisted for doing the right thing, unable to get anyone to give them a chance? Probably too many. If telling my story means even one person gets an opportunity they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Elena nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. The interview took place the following week, in the conference room with the Detroit skyline visible through the windows. Rebecca asked thoughtful questions about Elena's experience at Blackwell, the whistleblowing, the blacklisting, and finally finding her way to Chen Precision. What made you take the risk of breaking into Chen Precision that night? Rebecca asked. I wouldn't call it breaking in exactly. The door was open. Elena smiled slightly, but I was desperate. I'd spent 18 months applying for jobs, getting nowhere, watching my savings disappear. I knew I could solve their engine problem. I just needed someone to listen. And Mr. Chen listened. Eventually, after calling me trash and threatening to have me arrested. Marcus winced at the reminder. Rebecca turned to him. You really did that? I did. Not my proudest moment. I was scared, exhausted, and I took it out on Elena. I saw her as a threat instead of a solution because she didn't match my expectations. What would you say to other business leaders who might be making similar mistakes? Marcus thought carefully before responding. Look at who's not in the room. Look at whose voices you're not hearing. Chances are you're missing perspectives that could make you better, stronger, more successful. And it's not just about being a good person, though that matters too. It's about recognizing that homogeneous teams have blind spots. We almost missed Elena, and it would have cost us everything. The article ran 3 weeks later, with the headline, From Blacklist to Lead Engineer, How One Woman's Persistence and One CEO's Humility Changed a Company. It was fair, balanced, and thoughtful. It didn't shy away from Marcus's initial prejudice or the systemic issues that had led to Elena's blacklisting, but it also highlighted the positive outcome. A talented engineer back in her field, a company thriving, and a broader conversation about opportunity and merit. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus's phone rang constantly, other blacklisted engineers reaching out, companies asking for advice on improving their hiring practices, and reporters requesting interviews. Chen Precision's website crashed from traffic. The company's LinkedIn page exploded with engagement. But the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after the article published, Marcus received a certified letter from Blackwell Marine Technologies. He opened it with trepidation, expecting a legal threat. Instead, he found an apology. The letter was from Blackwell's new CEO, who had taken over after the old leadership was forced out following an independent investigation into the company's practices. The investigation, triggered in part by renewed scrutiny after Elena's story went public, had found systematic safety violations and a culture of retaliation against whistleblowers. We owe Ms. Rodriguez an apology, the letter read. Her courage in reporting safety violations likely prevented serious injuries or worse. Instead of listening to her, we punished her. That was wrong, and we are taking steps to ensure it never happens again. The letter also included an offer. Blackwell wanted to partner with Chen Precision on a major Coast Guard project. They recognized that Chen Precision's culture and approach to engineering represented where the industry needed to go. Marcus showed the letter to Eleanor. She read it twice, her expression unreadable. "How do you feel about this?" Marcus asked. "Vindicated, angry that it took so long, sad for all the time I lost." Eleanor set the letter down. "But mostly, I feel like maybe something good is coming from all of it. If Blackwell is really changing, if other companies are paying attention, maybe the next person who sees something wrong won't get destroyed for speaking up. Do you want to partner with them?" "That's not my decision." "Yes, it is. You're a partner in this company now." Eleanor looked up sharply. "What?" Marcus pulled out a document he'd been working on with his lawyer for weeks. "I'm restructuring ownership. I'm keeping 51%, but the rest is being distributed to key employees as equity stakes. You're getting 15%, David's getting 10%. The rest is divided among the other senior engineers. I should have done this years ago, made the people who build this company actual owners of it." Elena stared at the document, then at Marcus. "Why?" "Because it's right. Because this company isn't just mine anymore, and it shouldn't be. Because the only reason we're still here is that you took a chance on us. Well, I'm taking a chance on you too, all of you." "Marcus, I don't know what to say." "Oday, say you'll stick around and help me figure out how to do this right. Not just the engineering, but the whole thing. Building a company that actually lives up to what it claims to be." Elena's eyes were wet. "You know I will." The Department of Energy contract came through in October. Chen Precision's proposal, led by Eleanor and her team, had impressed the review committee with its innovative approach to hybrid propulsion and energy management. $80 million over 3 years, with options for extension. The company was going to need to expand, more space, more equipment, more people. Marcus spent weeks looking at potential facilities, finally settling on a renovated building in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood, not far from the old Michigan Central Station that had become a symbol of the city's renewal. The grand opening was scheduled for December. Marcus invited everyone, employees, clients, city officials, and the media. As he looked around at the crowd mingling in the new facility, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment that was different from what he'd felt building the original company. This wasn't just about success. It was about doing things right. Elena found him standing near the window, watching the Detroit skyline lit up against the winter darkness. "Quite a change from that testing bay in February," she said. "Quite a change from a lot of things." Marcus turned to face her. "I've been thinking about what you said that night in your apartment, about advantages and assumptions. I was pretty angry. You had every right to be, but you were also right. I'd built this narrative about self-made success, and it blinded me to all the ways the system was rigged, all the doors that were open for me that were closed for others. You've done a lot to change that. We've done a lot, and we're going to keep doing it." Marcus gestured to the room full of people. "You know what I realized? The story I told myself about building this company from nothing, it wasn't entirely true. I had help, I had advantages, and that's okay. The mistake was pretending I didn't, was thinking that acknowledging it somehow diminished what I'd accomplished." So what's the new story? The new story is that success isn't just about individual achievement. It's about creating opportunities for others, lifting as you climb, recognizing that we're all connected. Marcus smiled. Pretty different from the guy who called you trash, huh? Very different. That guy was kind of an asshole. He really was. I'm glad he's gone. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celebration unfold. Sam Okafor was explaining hybrid engine technology to a reporter. Jessica Park was showing a city councilwoman the new testing facility. David Wu was laughing with suppliers who'd stuck with the company through the tough times. And everywhere, people who looked different, came from different backgrounds, had taken different paths, all of them brilliant, all of them contributing, all of them making Chen Precision Engineering better than it could have been alone. "You know what the best part is?" Elena said. "In 5 years, this won't be remarkable. Having diverse teams, creating opportunities for people who've been overlooked, actually practicing the meritocracy everyone claims to believe in, it'll just be normal. The way things should have been all along. I hope you're right. I am right. You know how I know? Because companies that do this are going to succeed, and companies that don't are going to fail. Not because it's politically correct, but because it's better. More perspectives, more ideas, more solutions to problems. That's just good business." Marcus raised his glass. "To good business, then, and to second chances." "To second chances," Elena echoed, clinking her glass against his. As the party continued around them, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that desperate February night when a brilliant engineer showed up uninvited to save a company that didn't deserve her, to this moment of triumph and transformation. He'd almost missed it all, almost let pride and fear blind him to what was right in front of him, but he hadn't, and that made all the difference. Outside, snow began to fall on Detroit, covering the city in clean white, the way it always did this time of year, making everything look new and full of possibility, making everything look like hope. Epilogue. 2 years after that December grand opening, Chen Precision Engineering was recognized by the governor of Michigan with the Innovation and Inclusion Award, honoring companies that had demonstrated both business excellence and commitment to creating opportunities for underrepresented groups in technical fields. The company now employed 147 people. 40% were women. 65% were people of color. 100% were exceptional at what they did. Elena Rodriguez, now Chief Technology Officer and part owner, stood on stage accepting the award alongside Marcus. She thought about that night 2.5 years ago when she'd been desperate enough to break into a facility to prove her worth to someone who'd initially seen her as trash. She thought about all the nights before that, sitting in her tiny apartment, wondering if she'd ever work as an engineer again. She thought about every woman, every person of color, every individual who'd been told they didn't belong in technical fields, who'd been overlooked or dismissed or locked out. And she thought about how one person's willingness to admit they were wrong, to change, to grow, had created ripples that extended far beyond either of them. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Elena, college age, nervous but determined. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Maria Gonzalez. I'm studying mechanical engineering at Wayne State. I read about your story and I wanted to say thank you. I was thinking about dropping out. I was the only woman in most of my classes, and I was tired of people assuming I didn't belong there. But your story made me realize I do belong. So thank you." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You absolutely belong there. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." "I won't. And someday I'd like to work for a company like Chen Precision, where people actually value what you can do, not what you look like." "Well, we're always looking for talented engineers. Keep my card." As Elena watched the young woman walk away, card clutched in her hand like a talisman, she felt something settle in her chest, a sense of purpose fulfilled, of circles closing, of the struggle having meant something beyond just her own survival. Marcus joined her, having overheard the exchange. "That never gets old, does it?" "What?" being proof that it's possible, that the system can change, that doing the right thing eventually pays off. Eventually being the key word, Elena smiled. It took a lot of stubbornness and a little breaking and entering. Best decision you ever made. Best decision we both made. You could have called the cops that night. Instead, you called your better self. They walked out of the convention center together into a Detroit spring evening. The city was alive around them, construction cranes on the skyline, people dining at outdoor cafes, music drifting from renovated buildings that had once stood empty. Detroit was coming back, and so was everyone who'd been told they couldn't, they didn't belong, they weren't good enough. All it took was someone willing to see past assumptions, to recognize talent wherever it came from, to believe that there was more than one path to excellence. All it took was the courage to admit you were wrong, and the wisdom to make it right. The end